Hello and welcome to the Morning Scoop. It is Thursday, August 25th. We are continuing our Notre Dame coverage going into the game. We are officially Jackson Smith and Jigba amount of days left away from the early week one matchup against Notre Dame. So, yesterday we talked a lot about the Notre Dame offense and what I think they can do to try to attack the new Ohio State defense. Today we're going to focus on the Notre Dame defense and we're going to figure out how they might attack this Ohio State offense, who should be absolutely lethal. So let's dive right in. The defensive coordinator for this group is, in theory, on paper, Al Golden, but in most cases like this, it's going to be the head coach's defense. So this will be Marcus Freeman's defense, really. And, I think Freeman, so far in his career, he's been an above-average defensive coordinator to a good defensive coordinator at this stage. At Cincinnati, that was Luke Fickell's defense without question. I question how much say he actually had in the play calling and the actual schematics, but still, he by all accounts he performed well. I would say I was not tremendously impressed with him in his defense last year at Notre Dame, but you know what? It's a new year, new players, new personnel, so let's dive right into the team. On the defensive line, the headliner of this group is going to be Isaiah Foskey. He finished with 11 sacks last year, so he's a double-digit sack guy. He's a dominant player. He's a future first-round pick, in my opinion. And how he's going to present a big challenge, and how the Ohio State offensive line handles him could be a good indicator of how they'll hold up against some elite pass rushers that they'll see throughout the year. And hopefully, it could be a precursor to how they might handle a guy like Will Anderson, even though he and Foskey are probably not in the same zip code, but still, it's still important. And they also, they brought in some transfers. They brought in a Harvard transfer, Chris Smith, to come in and be maybe a depth guy for the interior of that defensive line, the defensive tackle spots. They have a bunch of guys who are, good size and strong. Smith is definitely a big, strong guy. So guys like him could be a handful for the Buckeye interior. Senior Jacob Lacey is another one they will employ in that interior role, and Howard Cross is another one they'll use. He's another senior. There's a lot of experience on this Notre Dame defense, especially on the defensive line. And they also like fifth-year senior Jason Ademi-Lola. I probably butchered that last name at the defensive tackle role. So they have a lot of guys they'll like to rotate through. Junior Riley Mills will probably bookend Foskey, I would say, on the other side of the D-line at that other DN spot. And again, they like to rotate guys. They're a very physical group. They have a lot of talent. And Foskey's really the guy you have to watch out for to give you real legitimate trouble. I think the Ohio State offense is really going to have to focus on making sure they chip him and slide protections to him, and also keep a tight end or a running back in on some obvious passing downs just for some extra security. But anyway, moving on to the Notre Dame linebackers. Now, Jack Keiser, I believe his last name is, will be their Sam linebacker. And from what I've seen watching the games from last year, he seems to be a very smart player, and they ask him to do a lot of different things, and playing the run and playing in coverage. He's not really a guy that's going to jump off the stat sheet at you so much, but he does a lot of the dirty work that you saw. Take Pete Werner for an example in 2019. He's kind of that guy who's underappreciated but has a really big impact. I think Keiser's kind of a similar guy for them in that sort of instance, and he's going to be underappreciated by a lot of fans, but he does make a pretty big impact. J.D. Bertrand will be probably the Mike, and he is their leading tackler from last season. I don't think he runs terribly well. That could give them some problems. I don't view him as a colossal impact guy by any stretch of the imagination. He's the kind of player where you really like him against the teams like Michigan State, Wisconsin, Purdue, the big Big Ten schools that really want to focus on running the football and playing physical and playing in the box. He's going to be, he's the ideal fit for teams and guys like that. But against the Ohio States and Alabamas and Clemsons of the world that have much more speed on the unit as a whole and have a lot more talent on the perimeter, he's probably not the guy that you really want in that spot, but he's a decent player. So the will spot will be anchored by someone named Marist Liufau, I believe is how you pronounce that last name. Again, I probably destroyed it, but he's probably their most talented starting linebacker. He missed basically all of last season, but he was able to return for the bowl practices against Oklahoma State. He probably runs the best out of all of them, and he plays very physical. He's around the football a lot. He's probably their biggest impact player at the linebacker position. I would expect him to probably get the most attention from the Ohio State staff when they really go to break down they already have broken down the opponent's scout, but when they really go to game plan and get everything ready, he's the one I would expect them to really keep an eye on. And he's also the most violent of the three as a run defender as well. Now, with the defensive backs, we'll start with the corners first. Cam Hart should probably be the boundary corner. He's a guy with a prototype build. He's one of those 6'3", about 200 pounds. So he's a big, long guy. I believe he came to Notre Dame as a receiver, actually, and they've recently converted him to corner. And, watching his tape, I think his technique needs to improve, but the guy does have a lot of potential. He has loose hips. He can run. And the Irish really need him to be really good this year. He'll more than likely be going against Marvin Harrison Jr. week 1, so that could be a good preview for Irish fans to see how he'll hold up against somebody who's seen as going into the year as a potential elite receiver. So that's going to be a matchup to watch out for. Clarence Lewis will most likely be opposite of Hart in the field corner spot. He's a veteran player. He has a lot of snaps under his belt. The Irish are really hoping he can have a year like Damon Arnett did in 2019 because he was seen as kind of an inconsistent guy throughout his first few years in the program, and they're really looking to see if he can put it all together on the field this year and have a big year of success. Now, we'll include the nickel with the corners as well, and that will most likely be Tariq Bracey, who he adds to a veteran group. These guys have played a lot of snaps, and they're gonna have a lot of experience going into the shoe week 1. And now, let's get into the safeties. So they lost Kyle Hamilton, who was a first-round pick. He was a freak. He was great in coverage, great against the run, but so that would normally be a big loss, but they're bringing in Brandon Joseph from Northwestern. If you don't remember him, he's the guy that made that ridiculous one-handed interception against Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship in 2020. Remember the corner of the end zone with Garrett Wilson? So that guy is a 2-time All-American, and he's probably a first-round talent at the safety spot, too. His name is definitely popping up in all the mock drafts lately, at least. And, he's a guy that, an offensive staff is going to have their hands full really starting to game plan for him because he's somebody that is rangy. He can run all over the field. He plays the football well. And, like all these Northwestern guys, he is smart. He trusts his eyes. He reacts very quickly. He's always in good position. He never gets out of position. And, that's exactly what you want out of a free safety like that. So he is, I would say, aside from Foskey, he's probably their best player on defense, and he's going to be one of the best defenders that the Ohio State team goes against this entire year, really, just based on the regular season schedule, at least. So, Houston Griffith is going to be another returning starter. He'll probably anchor the strong safety position. He tends to get lost in coverage at times, but he plays the run pretty well. He's a decent tackler. He's another veteran guy. This is going to be his second year playing next to a first-round pick, so that should help make his job a little bit easier at the very least. And overall about this defense from a personnel standpoint, I would say like Ohio State, the secondary and the defensive line are the two biggest position groups of strength, particularly the safeties with Joseph. But I think the defensive line and the DB room are really the matchups that you need to watch out for now. So what do they have to do? What does this all come down to? I really think that they probably need to play a similar style that a lot of teams played against Ohio State last year, which is bend but don't break a lot of the time. So you try to avoid the big play as much as you possibly can and keep them keep them having to run a lot of plays between the 20s, because Ohio State still really has to prove that they've fixed their run game, made it more multiple, added more schemes, and they also have to prove that they can run effectively when not out of the pistol. So that's going to be very important. Again, you have to focus on not giving up the big play, not giving up a big pass, and getting beat over the top for a big touchdown. And you have to get this Ohio State team in between the 20s, because until they prove that they can consistently score and move the football in the red area, it's going to be, that's going to be the book on Ohio State. It was the book on them last year. We saw it in the Nebraska game, saw it in the Penn State game, Oregon, Michigan. We're beating a dead horse at this point, but it's true. That's what you have to be. And Ohio State knows this. The staff is well aware of how they think Notre Dame is going to come out and try to handle this game. So, ultimately, it's going to come down to, like we said yesterday, it's going to come down to the battle in the trenches, and if Ohio State can really dictate the pace of the game with their offense and their run game. It's going to be very important to keep, when you're running the ball, it's very important to keep the offense on schedule, keep them in front of the sticks. You want to be in 2nd down and 5, not 2nd down and 8, not 2nd down and 9. You want to be in manageable spots, and that's really going to be the name of the game. That's going to be what Notre Dame's really going to try to counter. They're going to try to keep them at 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, and force them to throw the football way more. So, that's the Notre Dame defense. We're getting closer and closer. Keep following BuckeyeScoop.com for more daily content. We are going to have wall-to-wall coverage for this game and the post-game, so we are going to be a good one-stop shop for all you guys, and we appreciate you so much for listening, and thank you so much. You all have a wonderful rest of your day.